In half an hour, Penny Smith presents a new series of Crime Month. You're watching LWT with News at 10.
From ITN, News at 10 with Trevor McDonald.
Ashdown's election pledge, we'll make a difference. Blair under fire over Scottish devolution. Police reopen the bomb-scare motorways. And punters stake millions on tomorrow's National. Good evening. Paddy Ashdown launched the Liberal Democrats' election manifesto today, saying it offered a real difference in policy compared to Labour and to the Conservatives. Mr. Ashdown said education was the absolute key to Britain's future and confirmed his party's commitment to a penny on income tax to pay for better schools. He made promises on hospital waiting lists, the police and the environment. Labour said Mr. Ashdown's spending plans didn't add up. The Conservatives called it third-party flannel. Our political editor, Michael Brunson, reports.
Though he must work within the present political system at Westminster, Paddy Ashdown has little time for it. So he deliberately presented his party's manifesto today as a package which owes nothing whatsoever to the thinking of the Conservatives or Labour. Indeed, it doesn't even mention them.
So the Liberal Democrats unashamedly, proudly offer something different. Long-term visions, long-term policies.
The first of the manifesto's 5 main policies is certainly different. It's to put 1 pence on income tax to improve education. But then there's the plan to exempt 500,000 low earners from income tax. That's done through a new 50% top rate for very high earners. The plan to put 3,000 extra police officers on the beat is paid for partly by cutting mortgage tax relief. There's also a promise to cut NHS waiting lists and to recruit thousands more doctors and nurses, paid for by taxing cigarettes more heavily and raising some employers' national insurance contributions. And as always, the Liberal Democrats promise to introduce proportional representation in all elections. Paddy Ashdown doesn't blush at the idea of putting up taxes, both direct and indirect, to improve public services.
But look, there is no other way. You make the choice. If you want decent education and decent health service in this country, it is a simple deceit to pretend that you can achieve that without spending more money on it. The Labour Party says that they're going to adopt the Conservatives' spending plans. Goodbye that teacher. Farewell any prospect of ending the crisis in our hospitals.
The Tories reacted to Paddy Ashdown's pledge on education by saying that they'd increase school spending and would do so again in a prudent budget. And they said the cost to the taxpayer of the Ashdown package would be far more than 45 pence a week.
The Liberals are just trying to get in on the act by saying they can throw money at it without being remotely clear what their overall position on tax, spending and borrowing is. They're no more straightforward than the Labour Party.
Labour were just as critical, accusing the Liberal Democrats of irresponsibility. They said their figures didn't add up.
You would think after 22 tax rises under the Tories, they would resist another rise in the income tax rate. But once again, the Liberals, like the Tories, have been completely irresponsible. And I think people are fed up with parties like the Tories and the Liberals, where their spending sums simply do not add up.
Paddy Ashdown's advisers stuck to their 45p a week claim, though they admitted it was an average figure. But my point to the Liberal Democrat leader was a broader one. How could voting for his party guarantee change?
The truth of it is that if you vote Labour now, it won't make the difference. It won't make the difference to your school because Labour's adopted the Conservatives' budget. It won't make the difference to your hospital because Labour's going to spend less on the NHS. We're the only party that actually says we are prepared to ask you to pay more. 45p for every week for the average taxpayer, and that will be invested in schools. And the only way people out there can make a difference is to make sure that they vote Liberal Democrats, because that will make a difference. Now, I don't know what the outcome of the election will be, and neither, frankly, do you. Let's leave speculating about...
We do. That's the point, don't we? Because the great likelihood is that one or the other of the 2 main parties will get a majority of more than 20, 30, 40. And if they get majorities of more than 20, 30, 40, you're back in the position of being the small third party.
Here you go, you see. We're talking about an election in the country. You're talking about Westminster politics. I don't know the outcome of the next election, and neither do you. And frankly, I think what your viewers want to hear is not, can you speculate about some hypothetical situation on the other side of the election? It is, how does my vote make the difference today?
But it's not hypothetical, is it? This is how elections in this country turn out.
But you're making a prediction about the outcome of the election, which, if you forgive me, isn't yours to make. It is the voters to make that decision in the ballot box. How do they make a difference with their vote? Vote Labour, vote Conservative, and you don't make a difference to the teacher who's going to be sacked from your school. You don't make a difference to the fact that your mother-in-law's had to have a 6-month wait for that painful hip operation.
It's a message Mr. Ashdown now takes to the country that in every seat, not just in the key marginals the Liberal Democrats are targeting, real change demands a switch to them. Michael Brunson, News at 10, Westminster.
Tony Blair was attacked by the other parties today over a new commitment on a Scottish Parliament. Mr. Blair said Labour members of the Parliament would not be allowed to support any extra taxes the Scottish Parliament might vote for. As ITN's Joe Andrews reports from Glasgow, that was seized upon by the SNP, the Liberal Democrats and the Conservatives.
It was the issue that wouldn't go away for Tony Blair today. Again and again, he said no extra taxes for Scotland.
What we've said about taxes in Britain, that we won't raise the basic or top rate of tax, applies in Britain and it applies in Scotland. And now everyone's got the message.
It began with a newspaper interview in which he bluntly told the Scots that sovereignty would remain in England, and he compared the Scottish Assembly to a local authority or parish council. Then in Glasgow he laid down the law to the Scottish Labour Party while presenting a manifesto backed in the Blair family tartan. Although the planned assembly would have tax-raising powers across Scotland, he said Labour members would be bound not to use them because of his promise not to raise income tax.
What I'm promising is that the Labour Party commitment that it makes in England is the same commitment that it makes in Scotland.
But that wasn't enough for the Scottish press. As he strived not to sound irritated, they wanted to know, why give the Assembly the tax-raising powers at all?
Because I think it is entirely sensible that there is a power, but having a power is not the same as using a power.
For the first time in this campaign, John Major looked cheerful, claiming the Tory attack on a tartan tax had hit home.
Now, they have had a policy for a long time that the Scottish Parliament can raise taxes up to 3p in the pound. That was the policy in their manifesto yesterday. If he's changed this morning, it's an indication of the total and utter chaos their devolution policy is now in.
I think Tony Blair has shown exactly what he thinks of Scotland. He's shown exactly the weakness of his devolution scheme, and he's blown this election campaign in Scotland wide open.
But the Liberal Democrats, who were launching their Scottish manifesto, said Mr. Blair had the English in his sights.
He's not showing proper sensitivity to Scottish opinion, and I think what he is doing is showing more interest in Middle England voters than he is in Scottish democracy.
It's the first time in this campaign that Tony Blair has come under any real pressure, and it's an unwelcome reminder of just how much pain the details of devolution can give the Labour Party. Joe Andrews, News at 10, Glasgow.
The Conservatives held the first big political rally of the campaign tonight. Labour and the Liberal Democrats have theirs in the coming weeks. Tonight, the Prime Minister told supporters of the Royal Albert Hall in London that he had spent his life beating the odds and would do so again on Election Day. Our political correspondent Tom Bradby was at the rally.
The Tories believe that at last events may be beginning to move their way, but their rally tonight, the first of 4, seemed consciously sober in tone, pitching Mr. Major as a man of competence, experience and achievement.
The story of my life is about beating the odds, and I intend to beat the odds again on May the 1st.
He went on to talk about education, saying his upbringing had left him with a hatred of socialist arrogance. He talked of Labour's plans for devolution, accusing Tony Blair of incompetence and vandalism. And on Europe, he said he would not be afraid to act in Britain's interests, even if it meant standing out against the crowd.
So go out from this special British place this evening. Go out with conviction. Go out with determination. Go out with courage.
It was a sober speech, but it appeared to be enough for the activists. The Tories do finish tonight in a much more upbeat mood, believing Tony Blair is finally faltering. Mr Major believes there are thousands of voters out there who go down in the polls as don't-knows, but are in reality lost Tory voters, in his words, waiting to come home. Tom Bradby, News at 10 at the Royal Albert Hall.
In other campaign developments, Labour launched its manifesto for Wales today. Speaking in Cardiff, the Deputy Leader John Prescott said a Labour government would hold a referendum within months to allow the Welsh people to decide if they wanted an elected assembly. He said Labour believed the power to make key decisions belonged to Wales and not Westminster. Deputy Prime Minister Michael Heseltine campaigned throughout the northwest of England and visited a £500 million shopping development at Trafford in Greater Manchester. He said the development, the largest in Britain, supported the Conservatives' claim that Britain is booming. And Plaid Cymru called for a new deal for pensioners while campaigning in Colwyn Bay. The party said it was a scandal that around 50,000 pensioners in Wales were living below the government's poverty line. In 4 weeks, the election will be over. Until then, opinion polls will attempt to gauge the political mood. There have already been 4 national polls this week, and more are planned for the weekend newspapers. ITN's Helen Wright has been examining the latest figures to find out what trends are emerging.
Which constituency are you in? NOP's latest opinion poll for a Sunday paper comes at the end of a week where conflicting surveys have led some commentators to again question their reliability. But the papers believe they do give a pointer to voters' intentions.
If you don't have polls, essentially the campaign is operating in a vacuum. I mean, we could use other people's polls, but I don't think that would be fair. It's quite nice to be able to bounce issues off the public to see how they respond, to how they're responding to the campaign, how they're responding to the personalities as well as the policies.
ITN has analysed all this week's polls. ICM gave Labour a 14% lead. However, Mori put them 27% ahead. According to Gallup, Labour's lead is 21%. Harris put it at 24%. Once the numbers are broken down, our poll analysis shows that together they put Labour 21% ahead. Last week, Labour were 24 points ahead. That was from an analysis of 3 polls and didn't include an ICM survey, which this week contributed to reducing the Labour lead.
It's not a separate poll, but it brings things more to the centre and perhaps irons out the more eccentric results that we seem to see.
After mistakes in the 1992 campaign, the pollsters have modified their methods, but analysts say the results should still be treated with caution.
I would be very surprised if the swing were from 1992 were anything of the sort that the current polls of the last couple of days have been predicting.
As the polling continues, the companies realise that May 1st will be Judgment Day not only for the politicians but for all of them as well. Helen Wright, News at 10.
And now to round off our political week, our political editor Michael Brunson joins me again tonight. Mike, what did you make of the Lib Dems today?
Well, I thought the message was very clear. What they were saying to people really was, forget, if you like, the tactical voting, forget whether we're first, second or third in the constituencies. If you like the message we've put before you, please vote for us, because that way we will do, we think, far, far better. It may come out in the wash much better. The problem is, of course, as I was suggesting to Paddy Ashdown, under the present system, they don't do all that much better.
Was that a gaffe by Tony Blair on devolution today?
Well, I'm quite certain that he did want to reinforce the message to his Scottish Labour supporters that tax and spend was at an end, and therefore they were not to support the use of the tax-raising power in the Scottish Assembly. But I think it was quite a serious gaffe to use that analogy with a parish council. Mr Major this evening leapt on that and said that was totally insulting to Scotland.
Scots didn't like it either. What did you make of the week as a whole? First week of formal campaigning, how did it go?
Well, obviously the Lib Dems ended on a good note. They got their message across. Labour had a good launch yesterday, but I think they had a pretty rocky day today. The Conservatives got out from under the sleaze which they were still mired in on Monday. But I think now that they are feeling a bit battered because Mr Major has moved on to this business of the trust. Can you trust Mr Blair? And again, at his rally tonight, he was saying, look, he promised the Scots certain things about this Parliament. Now he appears to be saying that he can't. Saying one thing yesterday, not doing another thing today, not to be trusted. So that attack is perhaps getting home a bit.
Michael, thank you. See you next week. We have more news ahead tonight, including